never thought a job could ruin my life. But looking back, maybe I should have known better. My name's Mark Reynolds. I'm 37 years old. I've been fixing things for a living since I dropped out of trade school. Not because I wanted to, but because life doesn't wait for you to figure things out. Rent comes due whether you're ready or not. Every morning I'd wake up, check my phone, hope for a text about a gig, anything to keep me moving. A leaky pipe here, a broken fence there. Some weeks were good, most weren't. I wasn't building a business. I was surviving, hand to mouth. Cash jobs, no contracts, no questions. Just fix what's broken and get paid. I've worked in every corner of this city. Tiny apartments with peeling walls, fancy houses with gates higher than my ambition. It didn't matter. If they had work and I had tools, I was in. There's something honest about working with your hands. You do the job, you get paid, you move on. That's how it's supposed to be. But when you're just trying to stay afloat, you don't think about what could go wrong. You don't imagine a handshake deal turning into a police report. You don't picture yourself standing in your living room, heart pounding as two cops knock on your door. All you know is, you needed that money. You did the work. You didn't steal anything. And yet, here you are, caught in something you didn't start and can't understand. This story isn't about crime, it's about trust. About how quickly your life can flip when someone decides to lie. And for me, it started like any other Tuesday. The job came out of nowhere. I was sitting on my porch with a half-empty coffee and a fully empty wallet when the call came in. Guy named David Harper said he found my number on a flyer I left at the hardware store. He needed some work done around his house. Fixing a deck, patching some drywall, nothing out of the ordinary. He asked if I could come take a look. I was there within the hour. The house was out in the suburbs, one of those places where the lawns look like green carpet and the mailboxes match. David met me outside. Mid-40s, button-down shirt, the kind of guy who probably works from home and has a standing desk. He smiled, shook my hand, talked like he'd known me for years. He walked me around the house, pointing at things that needed fixing. The deck boards were rotting, one of the bathroom doors didn't close right, and there was a hole in the drywall where his kid had apparently swung a baseball bat a little too hard. I took notes, nodded along and gave him a rough estimate. He didn't haggle. That should have been my first red flag. He just said, "Sounds fair," and asked when I could start. I told him I could begin the next morning. He said perfect, then paused and added, "I'll be paying in cash, by the way. Hope that's all right." I told him it was more than all right. In my world, cash means quick, clean, no paperwork, no taxes, no waiting for checks to clear. He handed me $100 on the spot. For supplies, he said, and told me he'd have the rest ready when the job was done. I thanked him, shook his hand again, and drove home feeling like, for once, things might be turning around. That night I told my sister about the job, told her it seemed solid, easy work, good pay. She smiled and said, "Just make sure you get everything in writing." I laughed it off. I told her I've done this 100 times. I told her people like David don't cause trouble. I was wrong. The job took 3 days. I showed up early, left late, and didn't cut corners. That's how I've always worked. Do it right the first time, even if no one's watching. Especially when no one's watching. David wasn't around much while I worked. He'd pop out every now and then with a coffee or ask how things were going, but mostly he stayed inside taking calls, working on his laptop. The deck came out solid, reinforced the joists, replaced every board, even sealed it with a weather coat he didn't ask for. The drywall patch in the hallway looked clean. You'd never know it was ever damaged. The bathroom door wasn't just fixed, it closed smoother than it probably ever had. I took pride in that kind of thing. Still do. On the last day I cleaned up my tools, swept up the dust and knocked on the door to let him know I was done. David opened it with a smile, looked around, nodded. "Looks great, Mark. Really appreciate it." Then he disappeared into the house for a minute and came back with an envelope. "As promised," he said, handing it to me. I opened it right there, $1,200 in cash. I thanked him, told him to call me if he needed anything else, and we shook hands one last time. I walked off that porch feeling good. Like, really good. The kind of good you don't feel often when you're just scraping by. I stopped by the gas station on the way home, filled up my truck, grabbed a hot dog and a soda, and just sat in the lot for a while. Thought about maybe taking the weekend off. Thought about how nice it'd be to not worry about money for a few days. I didn't know that would be the last normal day I'd have for a long time, because at that moment, while I was sitting there feeling like things were finally turning in my favor, David was already setting a different plan in motion, and I had no idea. It started with a knock, not the kind you ignore, not a friendly one either. It was sharp, heavy, like whoever was on the other side wasn't going away. I opened the door and there they were, 2 cops, standing like they already had something on me. One of them asked, "I'm Mark Reynolds?" I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" The taller one pulled a notepad from his pocket and looked me straight in the eye. "We're here about a theft report filed against you," he said. I laughed like it had to be a mistake. I told them, "I think you've got the wrong guy." He said, "The homeowner, David Harper, says you stole from his house." Right there, everything shifted. My mouth went dry. My hands started shaking without me even realizing. I told them I didn't steal anything. I told them I did a job for him. He paid me. And that was that. The other cop asked if they could come inside. I didn't even think. I just stepped aside and let them in. They asked if I had any of the stuff he claimed was missing. Some watch, a small box of jewelry. Nothing I'd even noticed, let alone touched. I said no. I told them I didn't go through his things. I was there to work, not snoop around. One of them asked if I had proof of payment. I said he paid in cash. No receipt, no bank transfer, nothing official. Just a handshake and an envelope. They wrote that down like it mattered, like cash meant guilty. They walked around a bit, asked me more questions I didn't know how to answer. Did I see anything valuable while working? Did I have any financial problems? Did I need money? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them I've needed money my whole life, but that doesn't make me a thief. But I didn't say much. I just stood there watching everything unravel. And then one of them said, "We may need you to come down to the station and give a formal statement." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was serious. And I had no idea how to prove I didn't do something I never even thought about doing. That knock on the door changed everything. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about every second I'd spent at David's house, replaying every move I made, every room I entered, every word I said. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. What did I miss? What did I do wrong? The next morning I drove to the station. I wasn't arrested, not yet. They said they just needed a statement. But let me tell you, when you're sitting in that room, when the door clicks shut behind you, when there's a recorder on the table and a cop staring at you across it, it doesn't feel like just a statement. It feels like you're already guilty and just haven't admitted it yet. They asked the same things as before, just slower. Did I see a watch? Did I see jewelry? Did I go upstairs? Did I go into any rooms that weren't part of the job? I told them no, no, no. I stayed where I was supposed to. I fixed the deck, patched the wall, adjusted the door. That's it. Then they slid a piece of paper across the table. A list of items David claimed were missing. I didn't even recognize half of them. Some fancy watch brand I'd never heard of, a silver bracelet, an old coin in a case. None of it sounded familiar. They asked if I'd be willing to let them search my place. I said yes. I had nothing to hide. But that didn't make it easier. Watching strangers go through your things, open drawers, check under your bed, it makes you feel small. Like everything you are can be reduced to someone else's suspicion. They didn't find anything, because there was nothing to find. But they didn't say sorry. They didn't say, "You're free to go." They just nodded and left like the story wasn't finished yet. And that's when it really started to hit me, that this wasn't going away. that even though I didn't do anything, it was still happening. My name was in their system now. Someone had pointed a finger, and that was enough to put everything I'd worked for on the line. I walked out of that station feeling like a different person, like I wasn't Mark the handyman anymore. I was Mark the guy who might have stolen something, and I didn't know how to make that go away. Word gets around fast when you're in a small business, faster than you think. I didn't tell anyone what was going on, but it didn't matter. Within a week, the calls stopped. People who used to text me for quick jobs just stopped. No one said anything, but I could feel it, like something invisible had wrapped around my name. I walked into a local supply store I've been going to for years, and the guy at the counter wouldn't even look me in the eye. Just rang me up, handed me my change, and looked past me like I wasn't there. That's when it hit me. David's story was out there. Maybe not the whole thing, maybe just whispers, but enough. I tried calling a couple clients I'd worked with in the past, told them I was looking for work, asked if they needed anything fixed. One of them paused and said, "Hey Mark, everything okay with you lately?" I told him, yeah, just slow season. He didn't call back. I used to get by on word of mouth. Now my name was poison. No proof, no trial, no chance to explain. Just one guy with a story and enough people willing to believe it. My sister asked me if I needed help with rent. I told her I was fine. I wasn't. Everywhere I went, I felt like people were watching me. Not because they were, probably, but because once someone accuses you of something like that, your brain starts turning on itself. You start wondering if people know, if they believe it, if they see you differently now. The worst part wasn't losing the money or the jobs. It was the silence. The slow disappearing of everything I'd built. I never had a big reputation, but I had trust. I had a name that meant something. Now it felt like I was just waiting to find out how much worse this could get. I thought it would all blow over, I really did. I thought maybe after a few weeks they'd see there wasn't enough evidence. Maybe someone would realize the whole thing didn't make sense. But instead, it got worse. A letter showed up in the mail, from the county court. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a notice, formal charges, petty theft, a court date. My stomach dropped. I read it twice, 3 times, hoping I'd misunderstood. But it was there in black and white. They were actually going through with it. I sat on the edge of my bed just staring at that paper. My head was buzzing. I didn't even know where to start. I'd never been in a courtroom in my life, never had a reason to talk to a lawyer. Now I was looking at a future where this thing could stick to me forever. I called my sister, told her everything. She didn't even hesitate. Said we'd figure it out, said we'd get a lawyer. I told her I didn't have that kind of money. She said we'd find someone who believes me, someone who knows how to deal with this. The next few days were a blur, calling numbers, leaving voicemails, waiting for people to call back. I finally found a public defender who agreed to meet. I walked into his office with everything I had, texts from David, photos of the work I did, even receipts from the hardware store. He listened, nodded, took notes. He told me it wasn't going to be easy. Said the problem with these cases is, they're not about evidence, they're about stories. And David had told a story that made sense to the cops, to the court. A guy comes into his house, works alone, gets paid in cash, something goes missing. People fill in the blanks. But the lawyer said something else too. Something that stuck with me. He said, they still have to prove it. And right now, all they've got is a man's word against yours. That's not enough. Not yet. It gave me a little hope. Not much, but enough to stand up and try. Because now I wasn't just trying to clear my name, I was fighting for my life back. Court isn't like what you see on TV. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's slow, cold. Like everyone's just going through motions they've done 1,000 times before. I walked in wearing the only suit I owned, one I hadn't put on in years. My hands were sweating, my legs felt weak, but I kept walking. They called my name. I stood. The prosecutor read the charges like I was reading from a script I didn't write. Petty theft, alleged stolen property, value under a certain amount. It didn't matter how small the amount was, it still felt like my whole life was being dragged through the mud. My lawyer spoke calmly, told the court we were pleading not guilty, said we had evidence, photos, witnesses to my work, no record of wrongdoing. I stood there silent, watching my life being sorted into folders and sentences. David wasn't there. That surprised me. I expected to see his face, expected him to look at me, but he sent in a statement. Said the items went missing during the time I was working, said no one else had access, said I was the only one who could have taken them. It was all just words, but words carry weight when they come from the right person. He didn't need proof. He had certainty. The judge scheduled the next date, told us we'd be going to trial if it couldn't be resolved. I nodded, trying not to show the storm building inside me. As I left the courtroom, I passed a man in the hallway, just some stranger waiting for his turn. He looked at me and nodded. That was it, just a nod. But for some reason, it stuck with me. Like he knew, like he'd been through it. I walked out into the sunlight feeling like I'd just walked through something I couldn't describe. I wasn't free, I wasn't cleared, but I was still standing. And in a situation like this, sometimes that's all you can ask for. I started carrying that envelope everywhere. The one David gave me, $1,200 in cash. I hadn't spent $1 of it, not one. It sat in a drawer for weeks after he handed it to me, and when things started going bad, I pulled it out and kept it with me. I don't know why. Maybe part of me thought it proved something. That it showed he paid me. That there was no dispute, no confusion. But every time I looked at it, it just made me feel worse. Like it was some kind of trap I didn't see coming. My lawyer said it wasn't enough. Said cash doesn't leave a trail. Said it's my word against his. But I couldn't let it go. I kept thinking maybe it mattered. Maybe it meant something. I started remembering every detail of that last day. The way David handed it to me. The way he smiled. The way he watched me count it like he wanted to make sure I knew it was all there. And I did. I knew. So I started digging. Looking through texts, old voicemails, anything that could help. And that's when I found it. A photo I'd taken of the work. Not just of the deck or the wall, but of the envelope sitting on the table, half open. I took it without thinking, like I was documenting the end of the job. It was small, blurry, but it had a timestamp, a location. It showed the money existed, that I didn't make it up, that he gave it to me willingly. I sent it to my lawyer. He didn't say much, but I could hear it in his voice. This was something. Maybe not everything, but something. And that's when it hit me. David wasn't just trying to hurt me. He was trying to erase the truth. Pretend that the job never happened the way it did. But now I had proof it did. Not enough to end it. Not yet. But enough to make him answer for it. After months of back and forth, the day finally came. The trial. I woke up that morning with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I put on my best shirt, the one with the collar that still stood up, and tried to tell myself this was just another job. But it wasn't. This was my life on the line. When I walked into the courthouse, everything felt bigger than me, bigger than anything I'd dealt with before. The halls smelled like old wood and worry. People in suits moved quickly, talking in low voices. I found my seat and sat down, hands shaking just a little. The prosecutor laid out his case first. He told the story like a movie script. David's stuff went missing. The only person with access was me, the guy he hired, the handyman. It was simple. It made sense to a lot of people. Then my lawyer got up. He told the truth. That I worked hard, that I did the job right, that David paid me in cash. He showed the photos, the messages, the proof that the money changed hands. There were witnesses too, neighbors who saw me working, a delivery guy who remembered dropping off supplies. They all said the same thing. I was just doing my job. David didn't show up in court. He sent a letter, But it wasn't enough. The judge looked at everything, listened to everyone, and finally said something I never thought I'd hear. The charges were dropped. No theft, no case. When I walked out of that courtroom, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Not just because it was over, but because someone finally believed me. It wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about reclaiming my life. And that's what I did. Slowly. Step by step. One day at a time. The days after the trial felt strange, like I was walking around in a different skin. People looked at me differently now, some with curiosity, some with relief, a few even with respect. It was like the air around me had changed just enough to let me breathe again. But it wasn't easy to just go back to normal. I had to rebuild. Not just my reputation, but my confidence. The calls didn't come flooding back overnight. I had to knock on doors, reach out to old clients, remind them who I was. I worked harder than ever. Took smaller jobs, helped neighbors for free sometimes just to get the word out that I was still here, still trustworthy. I kept my head down, my tools close, and my focus sharp. And slowly, things began to shift. One job led to another. One recommendation turned into two. The quiet voices of doubt started to fade. My sister was right. Sometimes all you need is one person who believes in you. And then another. And another. It wasn't just about fixing decks or doors anymore. It was about fixing what had been broken inside me. I won't lie. It still hurts, thinking about what I went through. About how close I came to losing everything. But I'm standing now, stronger because of it. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Trust isn't given. It's earned. Every day. No matter what. Sometimes I wonder how different things could have been if I'd just walked away. If I'd taken the money and left the job behind without question. But I couldn't do that. I wasn't made that way. This experience changed me. It taught me that trust is fragile, and sometimes people you think you can count on will let you down. But it also taught me something else, about standing up, about fighting even when the odds are against you. Thank you for listening to my story. If you like this kind of content, kindly leave us a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thank you.